And before we dive into our panel Q&A, I'm going to introduce one of our panelists, Jason Allen. You may have been familiar with some of his stories that have trended, but he's going to show us some of his creations in the world of AI, creativity, and art. And then we're going to dive into the panel. So, Jason.
Thank you very much. So I have these Meta smart glasses that I bought to come here to Dubai. I just want to have a little fun with it. So now I'm recording you, recording me, or however. Is the light on? Is the light on? Okay. So I want to do something fun to start. I want everybody at the count of three. So I'm going to count to three, and I want to hear it. I want you to say, "Welcome to the future." Okay? Does everybody understand? All right. 1, 2, 3. Welcome to the future. A round of applause for everybody. Thank you so much. That's awesome. So I'm not going to wear these. They're kind of awkward if I could put that. Okay, so this is just going to be a really quick overview of what I'm doing currently, present time. So we're going to go over a lot of the history and stuff for the panel and the questions, but this is about Tradigital Allograph prints through Alta Art and Art Incarnate, my new AI luxury AI company. So just today, I had a big fiasco last night, and as I was coming here, my luggage was lost courtesy of British Airways. But fortunately, it was recovered, and I went to the airport last night, picked it up, and I have some Hanamula 308 GSM fine art prints to compare with these Tradigital Allograph prints by Alta Art. In the pre-function P2, it's just over here. If you wanted to go take a look at that. You'll get an idea of what this is. So, I guess I should probably say, this is the world exclusive. That's why it's only partially being revealed, because we haven't revealed it yet. It was going to be at George R.R. Martin's Jean Cousteau Cinema in Santa Fe a couple weeks ago, but that had to be canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. So, yeah, real quickly, the art that started it all, right? Théâtre du Spatial is a piece from my Space Opera Theater Sequence Alpha body of work. Through Art Incarnate, of course, I generated this using Midjourney. I believe AI is a tool and is wielded through the power of the human mind. I think we're going to go over a lot of this. So, I don't really need to. How do I? Oh, yeah. So this is the story. Do you want me to go over it now? This is kind of just going ad hoc. This is really controversial, right? That I used artificial intelligence to create art that won in a fine art competition. I was met with all kinds of backlash and hatred and even threats and things like this. So after the second day of this, I realized I wanted to do something major, something different, something new. How could I make this as art as possible? What if I could make this art look like it was literally painted in a oil classic traditional style, like physically? And I discovered the technology finally. It's a long story, but I was finding this book about AI in business quite interesting. As I was going through it, they talked about the next Rembrandt. And if you're not familiar with the next Rembrandt, it was a project by Osei and some AI engineers that predicted what the next Rembrandt would look like if they were to have him make a new painting. And however they used the AI to figure that out is another story entirely, but the way that they produced this print was as though it was actually painted by Rembrandt himself using the actual brushstrokes, his impasto, this type of sort of techniques that he was using, and how they used AI to do that is still a question that I have. But the technology, the printing technology, requires a height map. This is a digital elevation grayscale height map of Théâtre du Spatial. I'm sure you could understand what's happening now. And so we go through, this is a video. I don't think we're going to be able to play it, but I'm going to be putting all of this information on my website very soon, especially for the world exclusive reveal of the 6 foot long, it's that giant, you saw at the beginning, it's huge. So And here's kind of a broad look at all of the Space Opera Theater images that I had. These are APs. We just had a photographer kind of take a picture. These are all actually hanging on the wall. But I mean, this is, it's sort of an introduction to my work and what I'm doing currently right now. If you guys are more interested in learning more about this, go to artincarnate.com. Oh, and yeah, we could just get started, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, panel time. Great, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Three.
Okay, let's dive into the panel. We're going to do a very quick introduction, but I want to also preface this conversation by saying when we think of AI and creativity, remember how expansive creativity actually is, right? There's many different definitions. But creativity, it includes visuals, it includes what we think of as entertainment. But AI and creativity is also AlphaGo executing a strategy in the ancient Chinese game of Go that humans in the thousands of years we've played it have never, ever heard of or considered. So when you think about our future with AI and creativity, remember how expansive it is, right? It's solving problems in ways we've never thought of and solving problems we didn't even know that we had. So with that, my name is Sinead Bovell. I work in strategic foresight in New York, and I also run a tech education company called Way, preparing the next generation to think about strategic foresight as a default. We'll go down the line. Jose.
Hello, my name is Jose Berengueres. I teach design thinking and software at the Federal University here in UAE.
I'm Jason M. Allen, of course, again.
Hello, everyone. My name is Irene Mwendo. Habari ya leo. That's Swahili for how are you doing? And I hope you all learn Swahili. Thank you. I work for an organization based in Kampala, Uganda called Policy. And we'll get into the reason why it's called Policy. Thank you.
Okay, so first question, and we'll start with you, Jason, based off of the presentation. Prior to becoming a digital artist and winning the competition in Midjourney, using Midjourney, which we'll get into, did you consider yourself an artist? Were you an artist prior to working with AI?
So I've never considered myself an artist. I still don't consider myself an artist. I'm an art creator. But so I have a background in computer science. When I got out of high school, I went into the Air Force for some time. After that, I got my bachelor's degree in computer science. I was most interested in video game design. And this translated roughly into creating Incarnate Games, which is a tabletop board game company. We create card games, tabletop games, dice games, things like this. And I realized that a lot of my computer science colleagues were interested in this same hobby. And fast forward to last year, of course, I started seeing, so I've worked with a lot of artists. I've commissioned art. I've been an art director for Incarnate Games. I have the same sensibilities as a lot of artists do. I have a high appreciation for art and artists, always have, and that's coming back from my love for D&D in my 20s. But when I started seeing what was coming out of artificial intelligence, I mean, I knew what it was, but I was on the fence about it, like a lot of people, but then around March or April in 2022, I started seeing art that I've never seen in my lifetime. And I said, okay, something's going on here. I have to try this. I have to see how I can, engage with my own creativity and artificial intelligence, and the rest is sort of history from there.
And I ask that because I think it really showcases that what AI and what technology has always done is help us decouple creativity from the skill to execute. So you may have not considered yourself an artist, you may still feel kind of imposter syndrome, but you were always a creative. And what AI has done is it's allowed us to decouple that technical skill for you to be able to execute. What was the experience like from creation to the response to how the world sees AI art today?
Right, so the experience from I'm a creative writer. I'm a rule writer. I am also somewhat of a technical writer. This comes from my methodical ABC approach to things, computer science background. So the experience as far as creating was very akin to being an author in the sense of creative writing, really. And I talk a lot about that, the power of words and how it actually transcends artistry. It's like the unifying tool that we all have at our disposal is the power of language and words. So I was able to use my words and my language to express myself in an artistic way. I was in a hypnagogic state one day in between dreaming and wakefulness, and started imagining, halfway dreaming, these women in Victorian dresses wearing space helmets. And I was like, wow, this is something I've never thought before. Oh, I could put this into Midjourney. And I incorporated in this idea with my testing, and Space Opera Theater was born. I knew that this Colorado State Fair was right around the corner. I curated my top 3 pieces, printed them out, entered them into the competition. My motivation was a 2-pronged approach. I can have more than one motivation, of course. I wanted to share my work with the world, but I also knew that this debate was going on in the basement of Discord about what is art, and are you an artist, is this art, things like this. So I wanted to bring that conversation out of the basement of Discord into the larger marketplace of ideas, and wow, I accomplished that in spades. I had no idea that I was going to win, let alone start a global controversy, but I felt like, given all the backlash, so I'm a jiu-jitsu practitioner. I might be a little out of practice, but I was actually on the way to a jiu-jitsu tournament with my coach when all this started blowing up. So a lot of my jiu-jitsu buddies were giving me they were making fun of me. Is what, it was funny to us. Like, you're gonna fight me about art? Like, that was, so we had fun with it, but I don't wanna seem like I'm insensitive. It's just, I can talk about this all day. I think I answered your question.
And Jose, I'll start with you. So you are a professor. From your perspective as a professor and through the context of the workforce, is artificial intelligence a multiplier of creativity, or is it a bit of a threat?
That's what everybody is wondering right now, and I think a very good angle to look at this question is to look at previous examples of new technology. And so if you look at when we commercialize electricity, what happened? Everybody got wealthier. Rich people got richer. Not so rich people got also richer. But this one is a bit different because it just came out a study from the US. They took a senior software developer, 20 years experience, next to a junior developer. They give them both AI, ChatGPT. And the junior developer was as productive, as good as the 20-year senior developer. And this is what's different. 20 years erased like this, right? So yes, we will be more efficient and more creative, more happy. I don't know, if you are a senior developer or a senior artist, right? Maybe you're not so happy today.
Okay, and in terms of, as a professor, how has it changed how you have to teach and how your students learn or how they use it?
This is amazing what's going on at the university right now. I myself use heavily ChatGPT to do things that can be automated by ChatGPT, so I have more time to think about other things. My best students are the ones that use ChatGPT most efficiently. I don't notice how they use it, they tell me. So for example, typical assignment, here's this data set, visualize, make a dashboard with Power BI. The best students, they take the data, they go to ChatGPT and say, make the code that visualizes this data. And ChatGPT makes the code, and then they can make the visual. That's the way to use ChatGPT. Some students are not so good at using it, and you can see it right away. How do you see it with this thing called tortured phrases? You can see it right away, you can say it. But the best students already know how to use it, and it's really, really amazing. It makes the class so much better, because then we can focus on the important stuff.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when you think about, the purpose of education being to prepare students for the world of tomorrow, AI is going to be the default. And so when we hear things like banning AI, we're basically banning an opportunity to engage with the future safely. And I think AI, especially in the context of education, it's an opportunity to raise the bar on what humans have to bring to the table, right? If a basic essay can be done by the computer, how do we now raise the bar on what humans have to do? And so incorporating AI, don't just use AI to write an essay, you'll have to then critique that essay that your AI wrote, which is a more challenging writing skill than most of us would have learned. So just like the calculator, we can continue to creatively raise the bar. And did you want to jump in, or you're just checking your mic? Okay, Irene, let's go over to you. So you are the executive director of policy based in Uganda, and it's technologists, it's academics, it's data scientists, it's creatives working at the intersection of data, technology, and design. So in your perspective, in what ways will AI help us create or perhaps detract from building more culturally rich and inclusive futures?
Thank you. Thank you to my panelists who've spoken before me, and you've laid a wonderful context. I just wanted to start us off with the reality that we are facing in Africa, most parts of Africa really, because I cannot speak for the whole continent. What we have seen so far is that there's largely a large issue on large language models that are feeding these AI tools. Our local languages, there are over 500 local languages in Africa. I already introduced myself with one of our local languages, are not fully online. So with this challenge already, you can already see that it's going to prove a bit of a challenge to creativity. But all in all, does not mean that AI tools don't work. They work. But there is a need and a clarion call, just like I think Dubai has already developed an Arabic-based system that is feeding into this large language model. We are hopeful that innovators in the continent and women can support in localizing this large language model so that they can have most of our languages. If I ask any African in this room right now how many languages they speak, at a minimum it's 3. And this has code switching, it has some local context. And when you're using tools like ChatGPT sometimes and you're asking it and you feel, okay, this is missing my point because there's a way we express ourselves in local language. So in terms of creativity, this again transcends online. And I was speaking to Jason and telling Jason, come to Kenya, come to Nigeria, come to Uganda. So this can feed into your creativity as you develop your wonderful artistic AI tools, because it will help you create a wider scope that's away from English, that's away from French, that's away from, say, Arabic, and include our local context, include our local languages, which will promote African women's use of these AI tools. I hope I'm making sense. Yes. Thank you. Yeah, so I was just laying the foundation on, there's a need for the internet to really resume and include more local languages. But in terms of the use and uptake, it's really creating opportunities, because this is something that I always struggle with, but it's a good thing. In Africa, technology advancements have surpassed our policy making. So sometimes when you want to hinder creativity, when you want to stop, why are youth going over and beyond, governments are not able to really regularize or control what the youth or women are actually using technologies for. So in a way, AI has been heavily used to really advance economic empowerment opportunities. Hey, if you look at the future of work, we find that people who are doing traditional roles are now really trying to see how they can employ technologies to do more advanced things, like improve their businesses, improve their creativity using Midjourney. In our office, we are the biggest fans. Jason, you have to give us a discount. And, when I look at journalists, traditional broadcast TV and radio journalists are now using AI to create their own blogs, to create their own digital channels and all, which again advances the future of work, economic opportunities, and also advances how our governments will relay and create better policies for use of technologies. Yeah,
I think your point was really important, especially in a summit full of futurists. We need to make sure that we're challenging technologists, designers, policymakers by asking who are these technologies for? And if that individual isn't represented in the data set, that technology isn't for them. And so you either try to accept that reality, which shouldn't be the case, or we go back to the drawing board and make sure that everybody is a part of the future that technology is creating. Now, there's technically this question around AI and creativity. It's often very polarized. Why do you think we are so polarized on the topic of AI doing things that we would label as creative? Why do you think that there's so much fear around that?
For me or just
The team.
Okay.
So I think it's it's the shock value of it. I'm starting to see the tide subside somewhat, but initially, go back to the beginning of 2022, artists were saying, "Oh, AI will never be able to do what I do." You know, like that's 10, 20 years down the road. 2 or 3 months later, it's winning fine art competitions. This is shocking. So shock is often met with misunderstanding and anger. So, and there's, you know, the whole idea of the grieving process. So again, I don't want to sound insensitive, but this is sort of how the nature of the advancement of human experience unfolds. So there's, it's just a matter of time for us to sort of adopt this new future, just as we have with other tools in the past. But is this answering your question?
Okay. So a bit of that comes from how do we benefit? If I put myself in a position of an African leader and all the misinformation and news about AI technologies, sometimes they ask themselves, will it make my leadership easier? Will it make my engagement with my constituents easier? So I think some misunderstandings comes from a point of governance where governance structures are struggling with, okay, so what after I use AI? Do I connect more? And really the work for technologists and educators like yourself, Shinyad, is to create simpler modules, use very simple language when you're talking about advanced technologies such as artificial intelligence. And we do this, we have hackathons running every month where we ask everyday people to really join and simplify the text on discussions about digital platforms and particularly AI. The other thing is we are really trying to build a body of work in local languages about advanced technologies. And I was asking some of our Tanzanian and Kenyan partners, what is artificial intelligence in Swahili, perhaps? What is artificial intelligence in Arabic? If you know, you know. To really make sure that even your grandmother can understand this, to break that silo of misunderstanding and misinformation on this. Yeah.
Yeah, and adding to Jason's comments, we kind of, in a positive note, like, remember 10 years ago, Google released Google Translate. I don't know if you remember. And everybody thought, oh, how many translators did lose their jobs because of Google Translate? Well, the answer is 0. Nobody lost their job. They just became more productive. So just growth mindset.
Well, sure. I've noticed, so I do have a lot of artist friends, and I've noticed that the ones that are incorporating it, adopting, iterating faster, making more money, doing things that they could never do before, they're the ones that are staying quiet and in the background. Yeah. And I'm curious as to why that might be. But it's like this loud minority of, I'm just going to say it, vulnerable narcissistic artists that are essentially combating against this by just lying about the technology. I think that we need to be honest about the obvious and help people to learn and be educated about what the technology actually is and what it is not. And if you guys want to help me in explaining what it is not to the Copyright Office, I would love that, because they're assuming we have a strong AI. The distinction is false. The AI isn't choosing to decide and wanting to create art, and these things are just coming from a place of misunderstanding. It only takes like 30 minutes to read about deep learning in conjunction with diffusion to understand how it works. So, I mean, this is kind of the thing that I've been repeating over and over because some people aren't receiving the message, and because of that, I feel like this is a petulant argument, and I have no sympathy for that. And at a certain point, willful ignorance needs to be pointed out, and that's what I think it is.
And I'll say too, you know, creativity is something that we used to think was uniquely human. And so when you see a system synthesize the technical skills associated with creativity, it can sometimes feel like we're losing what it means to be human, but we're not. We're just changing it. And there's a futurist that I really like, Alexander Manu, and he describes AI art and creativity as just another pore artists will express themselves with. And I also think we're in this strange transition period, right? How I like to describe where we are. The camera's been invented. Movies in Hollywood have not. We are in this pre-development. There's industries and jobs that have yet to be created and invented where this technology will be the medium for that. And it's hard for us to see that right now. And there's always been challenges, right? Plato was very against the invention of writing because orality was seen as uniquely superior, and it showed that you maybe understood concepts better. And now we think of writing as something, but if we lose this, well, that was also a technology that became kind of the platform of how we communicate. So AI, it's just young in its development.
Right. Well, so what you just said made me think of something. This is why I want artists to join our community. Instead of being so contrarian and pushing back against it, like, I'm not an artist, okay? Where are the artists that can use artificial intelligence to really show us what the purpose of what we can do with this is? They're instead just being, willfully in the back corner, not wanting to participate, judging it by doing whatever it is that they do. I'm not going to speak for them, but if I could have this conversation with an artist that is anti-AI, that's totally just carte blanche, no. How would I just want to, assume everything that they say is right and just get past all that to get to the question, how would you use AI to make art? Answer that question. And if that stumps them or if that doesn't spark any kind of innovation or ingenuity with them, then maybe they need to reevaluate what it means to be an artist, because artists typically will use things in a way that they're not intended to create something new and interesting and pave that way to the new form of whatever it is that this infancy is going to grow up to be.
Yeah, and art and creativity, it's here. It's not necessarily just it's not in the tool, it's not in the AI, it's not in the computer, and it's not in the printing press. It's here. Okay, my next question, as we kind of move towards the end, 15 years ago, the entire creator economy didn't exist. From podcasts to YouTube channels, to the millions that would now consider themselves as creatives in the modern age. What industries and roles have yet to be invented, or what trends are you seeing as a result of AI and the future that are hard for us to imagine today?
I am a professor, and I have no idea what's going to happen, I have to tell you. But what I know is it's not going to be boring. That's the thing. Yeah.
For sure, reduction of costs in developing and productivity, developing new products and productivity generally. What would have costed generally $100, $100, will reduce up to 20. And it's not in a way to just reduce businesses, but to make life easy, especially for young people. The continent, Africa, has 80% below the age of 35. So you can imagine if you reduce costs for productivity, then you give people an opportunity to engage and start businesses and be entrepreneurial. So the future is very entrepreneurial.
Yes, I agree.
So the way I see the future, so I like to imagine this, maybe, just to think about how entertainment is going to become customizable down to the individual level. We're kind of already seeing that now, but I'm having new experiences that I've never done before with individuals that are close to me. I can create artwork and share it with them with the confidence that I've created something completely novel that's never been seen before by another human being. And this creates that special connection with that person. So I see this eventually. I mean, I love it. I think that's fantastic because visual language is, a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So maybe as we fast forward further into the future, the full realization of this type of technology would be, you come home from work after a long week and you sit down with your significant other and you say, hey, honey, let's watch a movie about you and me going on. We find this antique clock that's who has these secret magical powers that whisks us away into this future of, you know, going through like time traveling and to the past and the future together, and eventually, you know, we realized that in the end we only needed each other, and you know, and then that's the prompt, right? And so and you sit down and have this experience with your significant other as you're watching. You two are the stars of the show. That's going to happen, and so you're essentially living vicariously through yourself, who are the movie stars that don't exist. It's just like, this is going to be some special new type of experience. That's just one thought I have about maybe.
Yeah. What would it look like to be able to actually rewatch your dreams? And we will have the technology to be able to do that. And when you compound that with the end of screens and the end of smartphones, entertainment and art, it becomes something not only that we just feel, but that we are immersed in all around us. So what does it feel like to be the star of your own movie and physically seeing that kind of happen around you? And who are the people facilitating that, creating that? These are all the futures that have yet to be invented, but we know they kind of line the coming years, which I think is really exciting. So let's open it up for questions.
Thank y'all so much for that dynamic discussion and very informative discussion as well. My question is for Irene. So you mentioned that the technology in Africa is moving faster than the policymakers. I would humbly say that that probably is the case globally. So to that extent, if you accept that kind of assumption, what would you say is the solution for that reconciliation?
Definitely engaging the youth in more decision-making processes, as is the space and engagement of the youth in Africa is very limited because it comes from a place of privilege, unfortunately, when it comes to our decision makers. The other opportunity that I feel is there is engaging innovators, young innovators, and so it's not necessarily the startups. It's people in our rural communities who are innovating technologies and advancements that ease their life, because every day there's something coming out of our villages that makes life simpler and better for women, for young people. So there's a very huge opportunity for setting pace and setting ground on public participation that is informed by Africans for Africans.
And by government, sorry,
Yeah.
I was just by government.
Yes.
You're saying when you say engage youth, engage African communities, you mean
a
government?
government-led process, yes.
And I'll just add, I think what we're feeling globally is that our 21st century solutions and technologies are in this kind of friction point with our 20th century institutions. So we should always expect regulation to be slightly lagging behind, and I think that that's a good thing. But we are also probably reaching a new tension point where we might need some redesigning of actual governance, right? So what does it look like to harden institutions for the AI age? An age in which last year nobody was concerned about ChatGPT, and this year every school and teacher had an existential crisis about how we teach. We should expect that to be the new pace. So what does redesigning look like at a governance level, knowing that things are just going to get faster?
Excellent panel, brilliant moderating, which is refreshing, thank you. I'm Deborah Webster. I have a couple of observations, if I may, and then I have a question, which is two-pronged. I think Africa has an advantage because the West and the rest of the world has seen a beep, beep, beep in terms of social media and data and how that's been used. So I think it can be more intentional. As for the regulation piece, I think Africa has taught us a lot as to if you look at the mobile operators and how they engage with government. So I work with a lot of researchers, AI researchers, specifically focused on Africa. So I'm super happy to connect and make that happen. Love the way you think, God bless. Don't want to see myself in a movie, however. Question for the professor. In this scenario where you had the student plus the very advanced software developer, there's two levels of this. When there's a problem is when the genius of the more experienced software developer comes in. So I'd love your views on that. And then the second question is value and how people get paid. So from a company perspective, if two people, their joint output is equal, then one could argue they should be paid equally. But in reality, it's a human plus an AI. So how does that work? What does the compensation element look like in the future? Because it also links to something Irene said before about making things cheaper. The model of the world we've seen in the past is that it's greater greed. And then one last thing, I think we've got to be more intentional. Sam Altman himself said that the default trajectory for AI is not to serve humanity. And I'm not seeing a lot of intentionality in this space, so I'd love your views on that too. Sorry, that's a lot of questions.
And I'm probably unequipped to answer them. And this is the problem. We are all unequipped. This is a thing for governments. And how do we want to live our lives? Yes. And that's the reason. I was talking to Irene, and I told her, the other day I was in a supermarket, and I met this guy in the supermarket working there. He's from Kenya. He's so happy. I'm upset. I say, why are you so happy? He said, it's the most important thing we have. That's why. And it teach me a lesson. And it's funny to think that probably Africans are happier because maybe they have less contact with technology. So we have to be very careful of how we adopt this new technology. We had this social media, and our teenagers are more depressed than before, and we just didn't pay attention to it. And we need to make sure that this doesn't happen again with AI.
And I can jump in on your question about the economics. I think when we look at, we have to remember that technology doesn't just innovate in a vacuum. Our entire ecosystem and financial models will also change. So the way we value somebody co-creating with artificial intelligence, what they're creating is different. So it's not enough just to swap in a human and AI producing the same thing, because then that seems inadequate. How do you actually value this? No, what we produce and why also evolves with technology. And so we will probably see the evolution of moving away from how we currently bill insurance and kind of the per hour things to much more of the output. But what we are actually creating in a world where supercomputers changes, and so do the economics as well. And in terms of AI, humanity isn't the default setting, but I don't think it's ever been. It's never been with the printing press. It's never been, and I know AI is different because it can make decisions on its own. But it's always been us who have to make the settings, and I think AI will be no different.
Well, so I'd love to see Sam Altman's evidence for AI not intending to serve humanity. That was your point, right? I would love to see the evidence for that. I'm thinking that this hypothetical attitude of the doomsday scenarios are, so AI learns from reading books, reading text, reading and looking at art that already exists, that was produced by humanity. So if you're being convinced by artificial intelligence that it can do all of these things, so we have no evidence-based traction for it taking over the world or doing all these things, then I think that we need to reevaluate how we're looking at it and focusing on what is rather than what if.
So I don't want to be misquoted and veer everyone off course.
Sure. Go ahead.
He specifically said the default is not that AI will not, by default, serve all of humanity. So it means that the inequalities and the injustices in this world are likely to be magnified, because that's all it is, right? It's a tool that magnifies our virtues and our vices, the best of us and the worst of us. What's cool about it, though, is we can learn how AI is trained to upgrade our own operating system, which I think is massively lagging behind. You guys are awesome. Thank
Sure,
you.
yeah, I don't see how the AI wants to do anything. It's really just controlled by the power of the human mind.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. I don't know if AI serves, but we kind of deploy it on certain things. And so we have time for one more question. Do you want to?
Hi. Thank you to all the panelists and Sinead for moderating. I want to go back to creativity. I'm an AI innovator, strategist, and artist. So I work daily with AI, and I'm advocate for AI. But I have a lot of friends that are not advocates of AI, so I can speak a little bit from their perspective and see what you guys think, because I can never find the right solution to their concerns. So I'm very young, so I have no history background, right, of developing my own art. Everything I do is very new. But I have a lot of friends that are older, and they spent the entire career in creating their uniqueness, whether it's painting, architecture, or furniture design, or product design. And they have a very unique language and aesthetic that they refined over the years. Now, a few of those, because of AI, they feel a little bit threatened and they see their work becoming more and more redundant because AI is based on the history of their work, because obviously it's publicly available data set, right? And they've been published so many times on the online. And they see creativity potentially becoming too easy, their language becoming too easy to be reinterpreted and adopted, and therefore they fear that we're going to reach a point where creativity is going to be, the diversity of creativity is going to be flatlined. So for example, you take Zadi, the architects. So the architectural language of one practice, say, is now being oversaturated by the AI outcomes. They're becoming more and more the same, looking like that. So
I think we need to take responsibility for what we do as people. As powerful as the tools might get, we need to realize that this is the trajectory that we've been on for some time now. I'm not telling you that you can't ride your horses and have your horse rodeos with your horse buddies and all of this stuff, but don't complain to me if I choose to use a car. And if all the cars end up looking the same and we're all going faster than the horses, then that's our choice to make. And this is just kind of an analogy to play off of what you were saying since we have such little time. But
no, and I think it's an important question, and to also have compassion for what has been, and then to also recognize that we still just haven't figured out yet what that new invention when we co-create with art looks like. So it's going to change how we relate, change how we create, and that will happen with AI as well. And as a final thought experiment to wrap up, we often have contention over how AI art is trained and then what it produces, and so whose is that really? But think about a world where an AI system is maybe in your neurochip, and it comes with you everywhere. It sees what you see. It watches the movies you watch. It goes through the breakups you go through from your perspective, and that creates art. What would we call that? And that's what's in the future. And that kind of changes the equation. So just as a thing to go out. I want to say thank you to our incredible panelists.
Thank you.
And thanks to the arts.
Thank you.